I did most of the Grow Smart Academies, I think, in 2020, which was all online. I think this is literally the first time I've ever been in a room with people at one. It's nice to see you. Yeah, we're going to just talk through a little bit, maybe some new frameworks about how to view land. Maybe not new to some of you, but this talk's just titled Land is Neighbor and Kin, Getting Beyond Monetary Considerations of Land and Soil. Some of this is going to sound obvious, but land exists. It's real. It is the living planet that we call home. We exist because the land's existence and health and ability to generate life preceded us, and it led to the conditions that allowed for our evolution and creation.
The land supports our every move, thought, breath, emotion, and dental appointment. The land supports the microbes and bacteria in our digestive systems, the eyelash mites that clean our eyes, our skin's microbiota that keep our largest organ healthy and in balance with its environment. The land is both source and ongoing sustenance.
It can be tempting in our culture especially to think that we are independent, but none of us are a thing unto ourselves. Actually, nothing at all is. We are not independent from the planet or from the land. We are, in fact, dependent. But more than that, we are of the land. We are of this place.
Our species and each of our individual lives are, first, an expression, an outpouring of the land's life into new life, a result of the planet's metabolism, and finally, a product of ongoing evolution here on this land and in the broader universe itself.
What happened? Land, then, is an inherent good whose existence does not require our existence. And it is not an only child, a thing unto itself either. It is a complex web of relationships that are real and alive, apart from any monetary or other human-centric consideration. If tomorrow there were no more humans and there was no more money, there still would be the land. If tomorrow there were no land, there would be no humans, and money would be worth less than every other worthless thing.
Our species is 100% dependent on the land for survival, for health, for our very existence. Also, our species is 100% dependent on the land for smartphones, for airplanes, for corn, for popsicles, clothing, horse racing, PowerPoints, this building, the air conditioning, the lack of humidity and the coolness that come from it, even the equipment, chemicals, and practices that we've developed and use that directly harm the land and the soil and exploit it.
So I guess a really important thing to realize is that the land does not need us, but we need the land. We are here because of the land. The land is not here because of us. And any perception that we have that the land is separate from us is just that. It's a perception. It is not the reality.
And from that, we can discern that we are always in relationship with the land, whether we acknowledge that relationship or not. And we can't get away from that.
Can we keep going with that?
Also, the land is in an emergency because of us. So it follows that we are also in an emergency.
So some things that we're going to cover after that maybe sort of weird introduction is we're going to talk about who is the land. We're going to talk about who and what does the land hold, what is our relationship to land, and what could our relationship to land be.
When I touch that flower, I am not merely touching that flower. I am touching infinity. That little flower existed long before there were human beings on this earth. It will continue to exist for thousands, yes, millions of years to come. And that's something that George Washington Carver said.
All right, so who is the land? But before we get into that, the who versus the what. Some quick thoughts on the misuse of language. Socrates said that this is a quote by Ursula K. Le Guin, who's a science fiction writer, that if you do not read, do it tonight and the rest of your life. So this is a quote from her in an essay. Socrates said the misuse of language induces evil in the soul. He wasn't talking about grammar. To misuse language is to use it the way politicians and advertisers do, for profit, without taking responsibility for what the words mean. Language used as a means to get power or make money goes wrong. It lies. Language used as an end in itself, to sing a poem or tell a story, goes right, goes towards the truth.
Not every place, culture, or time hides the land and its non-human inhabitants, shamefully some human inhabitants too, behind words like commodities, natural resources, raw materials, stock, or chattel. But our culture does.
This whatting of the world strips it of what humans have long known to be true, that squash plants and trees, insects, even water, are connected and relate to what and who is around them. So just really quick, I'm going to talk about how we got here. How did we end up with this weirdness of language about our reality around us? Much more complex than this, but very quickly, around the time of the Enlightenment, a shift in language began alongside a series of massive societal changes. We had the enclosures in Europe and other parts of the world, the crushing of peasant revolts, rise of capitalism, the terror of the witch hunt, colonization, genocide, and occupation of native people and land in what were then called the New Worlds by those doing those things, mass kidnapping and enslavement of Africans and indigenous people, chattel slavery in what was also called the New World, the Industrial Revolution.
These practices and the ideologies that form and formed their justification transformed most of the world from a who into a what. This happened not because it was true, but because it was and continues to be profitable.
Okay, so now we'll get to it. Who is the land? Land is a complex web of relationships that are real and alive and constantly evolving. Land is our species' source of life, and even the source of our Netflix binges. Land is the almost infinite relationships that make our lives possible. Example, our relationship to the complex web that is living soil. Land is our first and primary mother. Land is not reducible to price per acre, or price per bushel, or timber value. Land is not reducible.
So who and what does the land hold? Land holds everything, even that which is destroying it. The land holds us. The land also holds wisdom, trauma, memory, and the future.
So one example of how the land holds us is soil. Soil is not the land, but it's an integral part of it. Soil is that which animates the land and gives it life, and it gives us life too. Soil is a principal substrate of life on Earth. It's a biologically active medium that consists of organic matter, tons of different kinds of minerals, water, gases, and so many organisms, like billions of organisms, things they don't even know what they are yet. A living place with the nutrition, vitality, and relationships that supports almost all other life on the planet. That's what soil is.
Soil consists of layers. Its top layer, the one we're most familiar with, is called topsoil. That one is our bread and butter, literally. It's what we eat. Soil degradation and the practices that lead to it are taking the life and life-granting capacities out of the soil. The practices that lead to soil degradation are now commonplace anywhere you go on the planet. We do it here. Its reality and happening are often hidden behind words like progress, development, cultivation, job creation, national security, training exercises, resource extraction, and others.
So what degrades the soil? Lots of different things. Erosion can do it, nutrition depletion, which is kind of commonplace actually with the way that we farm, most of us, acidification and salinization, compaction, which happens a lot with development, chemical pollution, which, boy, that runs the gamut of how that gets there. Drought can cause it, flood can cause it. But what happens when soil is degraded, there's a lot of things, but one thing that happens is that we lose biodiversity. And when we lose biodiversity, that reduces the planet's life, reduces its health and ability to withstand stress and harm. And I want you just to imagine if you lost any of the biodiversity of you, like the gut flora in your digestive system that helps you digest food and get nutrition from it. or your white blood cells that mount attacks anytime you have a sickness. That's what's happening when we lose biodiversity in the land.
What else happens when soil is degraded? Well, we have more and more floods. Degraded, harmed, compacted soil cannot easily absorb water into itself. And although I thought mostly when we were talking about this about rural areas, the previous talk made me think a lot about cities. And I think I've noticed, at least in the last maybe decade, we've been putting a lot of effort here in Lexington into trying to reverse this trend in our municipality. And so I really appreciate the things that Brandy showed us about how developing our roads in more kind of holistic ways can actually create and build soil.
Another thing that happens when soil is degraded is that the rate of climate change actually goes faster. Soil is actually a massive carbon sink, and anytime we churn it up, it releases carbon, which is a primary driver of global warming, climate change, greenhouse gases. And it gets churned up through things like development, through the getting at of fossil fuels, the tilling that's common to conventional and even organic agriculture, the mining of minerals to keep us flush in tech and the weapons of war, the dropping of bombs.
Another thing that happens when soil is degraded is people have less to eat across the world. We can't grow food or support livestock with degraded soil. So we have to have somewhat healthy soil. And then a thing that commonly happens after that is forced migration because folks can no longer grow in the soil where they live, and so they have to go someplace else.
And then the last on the list that happens when soil is degraded is increasing conflict. Fighting over what we call resources is not new. But as resources diminish and soil degradation is diminished resources, conflicts will increase.
According to the United Nations Environment Program, 33% of our soil globally is already moderately to highly degraded. And we're losing 24 billion tons annually, along with 15 billion trees. And the way we do things, the soil is being degraded much more quickly than it can be replaced. It takes 100 years of good farming practice to build an inch of topsoil. So, kind of scary.
Yeah, and if you'll see there, topsoil is being degraded 10 to 40 times faster than it's being replenished. And according to the World Economic Forum, 95% of the food eaten by humans relies on topsoil for production. And yeah, Andrew already mentioned this. It takes 100 years to build an inch of topsoil.
1 teaspoon of healthy soil has more living organisms in it than people living on the planet. Those living organisms in their world of organic matter, minerals, gases, water, and other nutrients are not incidental to soil health. They are soil health. They are soil.
So our soil here in Fayette County that has not yet been developed or degraded in other ways, or that has been allowed to recover, is really exceptional. And we know this because we grow food here. We don't own land in the rural places. We grow some food in our front yard, we grow some in our backyard, we grow at a spot out in the eastern part of the county, and we have a lease on 2 pieces of property, one that's forested and one that's in sunshine, almost down to the river past Raven Run. And those places that we grow are really different from each other because they've been used really differently by people. And the places where the land has been harmed, it's hard to grow food there, and there's a lot of pest pressure. We don't spray anything, we also don't till. And so when you grow inside of an environment where the land has been harmed, things are very out of balance. We have pests eat up our food faster, water, maybe there's bad drainage, maybe lots of different things can happen. But in a place where the land has been left alone or treated well, it's really easy to grow food, and things are in balance. And there's all kinds of neighbors that join us there. Lots of worms in the soil, lots of insects, both predator insects and pest insects, what we call that. Animals, worms, and other neighbors.
And I also want to mention, if you drive around Fayette County, you'll see another thing that really healthy soil can sustain, which is livestock. So like so many beautiful, healthy horses all the time in this county, and that's really good evidence that the soil is in great shape. So here, that industry and our other farming industries are mostly talked about in economic terms. $2.3 billion benefit to the county's economy, 1 in 12 jobs, and these numbers drive policy. Considering the land from a strictly economic perspective, however, is short-sighted and misses these truths. The land's inherent value has nothing to do with money. Imagine losing a child and only considering them the way a life insurance actuary would. The land's health is a requirement for our own existence. The land's health is our health. Thinking of the land primarily in terms of money will actually keep us from reckoning properly with our situation. For example, if the land has inherent value and it holds us, what should our policy approach to its use be? What would a right relationship with the land look like? How should we be thinking about our region's future food needs in light of the global soil crisis?
So what is our relationship to land? Our relationship to land is real and always happening, as we said earlier, whether we acknowledge it or not. Our relationship to land is primarily abusive, but it doesn't have to be. Our relationship to land is deeply misunderstood by nearly all of our leaders and most of our species. Our relationship to land is intimate, integral, intrinsic. Even if we have no inkling of it, of this relationship on a conscious level, we're like a child in the womb. It's our source. It's our possibility. It's our whole world.
And so we talk a lot about what could our relationship to land be. Our relationship to land could be based on mutual care and acknowledgement of our total dependence, of the fact that we are a part of the land's life and health. Our relationship to land could be loving. Our relationship to land could be healing for both the land and for us. Our relationship to land could be neighborly and kinship-based. Our relationship to land could also be the most important relationship we're in.
It certainly makes every other relationship possible. So we need to start asking ourselves, both as individuals and then in the groups that we're a part of, whether that's our family units, our church groups, our civic groups, but what do we need to change in order for us to change our relationship with the land? How do we want to be in relationship with the land, given that we are wholly dependent on the land and the soil for existence, and they're in such crisis? If the amount of money land can generate for us or others is an inadequate measure of who the land is and who the land is to us, what is an adequate measure? What's an honest measure? What might a healthy relationship with the land look like? What would local, state, and federal policy look like that took the land's health and our survival as its starting point?
Absolutely. When we moved into our house, I wasn't sure what we were getting into in terms of the soil. When you shop for a house, you look for certain things in that dwelling. You don't really always consider the yard. But one of the reasons we bought our house is because it had a southern exposure and there was nothing blocking that. So we knew we'd be able to grow food in the yard. And luckily, our neighbor's mother, who had formerly lived in the house, and father had a big garden in the back. We've improved that soil. And the things that you can do, honestly, mowing your grass and just letting the clippings fall. Mulching your leaves, like these are basic things you can do that keep soil fertility in place. When the fall comes, I go around with a trailer and pick up leaves because it's such a valuable source of minerals and nutrients that those trees have been mining from deep down and pulling up into their leaves, and then those leaves fall. It's essentially fertilizer. So we build compost from that. As well as some couple of local restaurants, Doodles and Mickler's Native Cafe. They let us have their food scraps. So we layer in leaves, coffee from Leestown Coffee that they let us have, and food scraps, and we make our own compost in that way because it's really hard to get organic compost around here. So those basic things, I mean, you can also just let things grow permanently. If you've seen some people's yards, it's become more common these days to have a front yard that just looks like a pollinator garden. So whether that's small trees, echinacea, coneflower, I've seen so many different versions of it. People do that for professionally as well, so you can hire folks to do that if you don't have that particular skill, or you can just try your hand at it.
Yeah, so I think just telling them a lot is what I do. There's a lot of kind of terrifying statistics about the trouble our planet is in, and sharing those troubling statistics with them and giving them receipts, like link it to the study. Because we do have a council that is concerned about these things. They're balancing a lot of other things that I'm not balancing. But at the same time, 95% of our food relies on topsoil. And I think I read today, actually, that it's actually 40% of our soil globally is degraded. You can talk about how out west they have no water. Those people are going to be migrating here. How are we planning for that? There's a lot of things that we can talk to our elected officials about, and currently we have a council that I think cares and is open to hearing it. So yeah, just tell them. You don't even have to have a reason or a statistic. You can just say, I'm afraid of this because I can see that the planet's in crisis, and how are we preparing? They'll get back to you.
So the soil here in downtown Lexington either is or was excellent. McConnell Springs is just a stone's throw from the center of town, and that's where people first were like, whoa, yeah, this place, European settlers. There were lots of other indigenous people who lived in and spent a lot of their time in Kentucky because is such a fertile space. In terms of the city of Lexington, I think I would say, the more we pave, the more we give over to pavement and buildings, the more we build out and not up, the less soil quality we have. The soil underneath the road, there is soil underneath the road, but it's sort of dead. It doesn't have any relationships to any other plants. Nothing can really live in it. But I will say this, in those corridors, in the places where Lexington has creeks, watersheds, the city has really been doing a great job, I think, of planting trees and perennials that have, basically rejuvenated those soils. So a lot of those watersheds are, and a lot of, ostensibly folks are, I think, doing that and getting grant money for that to slow down stormwater. But slowing down stormwater, that's a permaculture practice. What you want to do is you want to keep water in your soil as much as possible for as long as possible. That way it doesn't erode soil, doesn't wash things away, and then it can also create environments where you can have more trees, and you can have more oxygen and cleaner air. That stuff's all a benefit. So I think our city's already doing a lot of these things. And I've been really encouraged by that, even though a lot of the news is bad that we're sharing with you today. Bans on pesticides. European countries do a great job because they have so much less land than us.
Yeah.
And so they've had to think about these things. Italy does a great job. France does a great job. These are places where the limitations of literal space have been a reality for those nations for many, many, many decades, or if not hundreds of years. So all of our best two-wheel tractors come from Italy. You can buy them in northern Franklin County. There's a really cool dealership up there. But, bans on pesticides and herbicides. I think, in my opinion, agriculturally speaking, a really awesome move that the city could do is just stop using synthetic chemicals in the spaces that it takes care of. Because what happens to those? Those wash into our rivers and streams. Those stay in our soils for a heck of a long time. There was some compost that they used at one of the University of Kentucky organic farms. It started killing their plants, and they followed the trail back. Well, it turns out it was compost that was made from cattle manure, and those cattle had eaten some hay that was sprayed with an herbicide, a broad-spectrum herbicide that just kills everything but grasses. And that passed through their system. It was composted at high temperature, and it still killed the tomato plants they were trying to grow in an organic system. So how long those things persist in our environment, it just makes sense. They're not good for animals. They're not good for us. I think that'd be a really cool step for us to take as a city.
Yeah, 100 years to build an inch of topsoil. Yeah, you can speed it up. Not doing any harm to it is helpful. Also, like kind of mimicking the forest, mimicking nature, like what happens there.
Or the meadow.
What'd you say?
Or the meadow.
Or the meadow, right, or the meadow. And so one of the things that we do to build soil is, Andrew was talking about making compost. And we will layer compost in as we're like planting. And even though if our soil is nice, we keep doing that. So like, let's say that you have a garden and you plant some things. Well, almost every plant that you have, unless it's a legume, is going to take nitrogen up out of that soil. And that's going to make it harder and harder to grow, and that's going to deplete the overall health of the soil. So cover cropping. You put in a fall cover crop, a legume of some kind, so that over the winter you can fix nitrogen again in the soil. You leave those roots in there, you just like roll it down or just cut it or tarp it. Roots in the soil is a really great way to also build soil. And so just that process over time can do a lot to kind of recover and replenish your soil. And happy to talk. There's like so much more to say about that, but happy to talk more about it if somebody wants to.
Well, it's just, I mean, we've always lived around plants. And it's smart to do so. Like the more, I mean, how do you feel in a park? How do you feel in a forest? Like how do you feel in a really beautiful space, you know, where there aren't a lot of humans, where there's, you know, maybe more plants than there are people. You know, it keeps us healthy in terms of just making the environment cleaner. And it also keeps us healthy in terms of just kind of mental health. It makes our cities cooler. That's smart. And you know, also, it might even start growing further. Like it really sparks my imagination when I see what they've done with the Town Branch Commons. They've planted mostly native things that are going to do really well here. What if we started to plant things that produced food? More in public spaces. You know, there's a food forest in Castlewood Park. There's also a pollinator space there.
So back when Jim Gray was mayor, a man who used to live here and now is out on his family land in Madison County named Jim Embry, there were some grants that were being given out in the city, and Jim, who is an old school kind of worldwide heralded food pathway guy, he put forth a grant proposal that at every public park we should have plots for neighbors to grow their own food, and that there should be a city employee who during the growing season had a shed there with materials and tools, and they were trained and knowledgeable, and they would help oversee and form the infrastructure and support so that there could be local food grown in every single park and other interstitial kinds of growing spaces in the city. He did not get that grant, but we should have that here. We should have things like that. Growing food in the city, like there's so few of us who have access to land. You know, we have some leases on land. We don't own land in the rural parts to grow on, but you have to have a car. Like transportation is an issue. It's absolutely an equity issue that we do not have urban agriculture. You know, Seedleaf is doing some land access that they provide up on what they call their urban farm on Limestone, but we absolutely need more than that. There's empty lots. Do you have more to say about that?
Well, and if the city could start an initiative where they partner with Seedleaf to kind of supercharge their work, that would be great, because a lot of nonprofits really struggle to raise money, and they're going to struggle even more in the current political climate to raise the kind of money that they need to operate. So, keeping it closer to home, like helping, the city of Lexington steps in, or maybe use the state funds. I don't know how that stuff works, but yeah, more public-private partnerships for urban agriculture would be really great.
Yeah, and I would say also just contact your council member and just say, like, we want urban agriculture. Why aren't there plots available for people? Like, why aren't there? It's a great question.
Tilling. And I say that as somebody who, maybe 4 seasons ago was still tilling, was trying to do less of it. But it's been, I think it might have been 4 years. But yeah, tilling, if it's one of those things that's, I feel like it's particularly American. It's like, we got a field of grass or some other things, and we want it to be like a really nice seed bed, and so we like want to do it now. And so that's really good at instantly getting like a place to plant seeds and plants. But what you do is you release carbon when you do that, and you also essentially, I think of what's under our feet when we're walking on a healthy soil. I think of it as an entire universe. So what you do when you till it, you're just starting over from scratch. Right? So everybody dies. It's kind of a genocide, And so you're starting over from scratch. If you've ever tried to plant something in the permaculture system, so like we planted rye in our backyard, rye and crimson clover, and a few other things in our backyard. So the rye grows up, as tall as me. And then when it begins to form its seeds, we crimp it down. And it thinks, oh great, I've done my job, I've completed my reproductive cycle, I can call it quits now. So that rye lays down, and then what it does is it begins to rot beneath the soil, and it fertilizes anything we plant into it. Now you can't plant tiny seeds, but all our tomato plants go into the rye. And those tomato plants immediately have a place to go. Their roots are taking over the place where those rye roots used to be, and they're getting fed by the rotting plant matter underneath there. And the rye itself keeps any weeds from growing. It's the best mulch you'll ever see. Keeps moisture in the soil. So I guess, if you have the time and you have the inclination and you do it at the right time, you can avoid doing things like tilling. But also taking all your leaves and grass clippings off your property, that hurts too, because it kind of keeps those things from going back into the system that they're from.
So I saw that question, and I've been just trying to choose. And so I think I'm going to say the left hand of darkness is what I'm going to say. How about you?
I'm going to say the Earthsea universe, Wizard of Earthsea, and a bunch of other novels. It's kind of like more of a fantasy wizard-based thing that I'm totally obsessed with.
So in the 2020 census, we had over 11,000 empty housing units in Lexington. We also have really strict single-family zoning laws. 85% of our housing stock that's for people is single-family. There's a lot of different kinds of policies that we could do that wouldn't really change anything in our built environment right now, but it would take some significant political will or a mass movement of people hollering a bunch. So I think that if we want to address Lexington's housing needs, there's zoning things we can tackle right now. Philadelphia did this kind of amazing thing, which our legislature would never let us get away with it, but let's just pretend for a minute. So we've got over 11,000 empty housing units sitting here, and we've got people living on the streets. 1,100 of our public school children are unhoused in Lexington. 11,000 empty housing units. In Philadelphia, if you have a house that could be rented or sold, and it is sitting empty, you will now be given a letter from the city, and you will be told you have 2 years to rent that property or unload it to somebody who will, or you will start to pay a $2,000 a month tax that will go into their affordable housing trust fund. That would solve our housing crisis too. So yeah, I mean, I think our housing situation is dire, and we absolutely need to move fast and seriously on it. It's complicated, but this idea that we have to like build out, there is no evidence that building out is going to get us affordable housing. It's not happened before. No guarantee it's going to happen this time. And we have all this housing stock here, plus single-family zoning that we could get rid of, plus expanding ADUs. There's a lot of options inside the urban service boundary. Well, we have a lot of plants that have been over-harvested. We also have, my sister's youngest child, who is smarter than me, says things that kind of blow my mind regularly. And the other day, I was talking about a particularly sensitive plant and how many plants I have to see of it before I'm going to harvest one of it. And Finian said, yeah, but you can like tear down the forest and build a house. And here you are, worrying about seeing 20 of this plant before you pick one, but that guy can just raise a hillside. So absolutely soil degradation through development, through flooding, through things like mining operations and the fact that mining companies aren't doing anything to reclaim those soils and those places in eastern Kentucky are absolutely harming some of the things that we forage. But I will say this, we come across plants that are endangered or like aren't supposed to exist all the time in Kentucky forests. Y'all, we live in such a healthy place. It's why we have to like protect it. I'll get like all nervous about something and then we'll like be like 500 of them. So yeah, I mean, I absolutely think soil degradation, but mostly it's development, honestly, it's human development. That's what's harming our foraging and those sorts of things. And now, you know, I don't know if the opening up of public lands that's happening out west is gonna come here. I hope it doesn't, but you know, there is timbering that happens in Daniel Boone National Forest and those sorts of places. But yeah, I mean, obviously we don't have as much ginseng as we used to. We don't have as much golden seal or bloodroot as we used to, but we still have it. And I think protecting those places is really important, but when people see dollar signs, people get crazy. It's something we have to guard against in our own hearts, and we have to be bold about it in others.